Lieutenant Jake Morrison stood at the docking port of Station Crimson Fang and took in the sight before him. The station was bigger than he expected, with metal walkways stretching in every direction. Red lights glowed along the walls, giving everything a warm color that reminded him of sunset back on Earth. His ship, the Horizon's Dawn, had arrived an hour ago for a simple supply run, and Jake had 4 hours of free time before they would leave again. The station belonged to the Ralthari, and Jake had never met one in person before. He had seen pictures and videos during his training, but nothing prepared him for the real thing. The first Ralthari he passed in the corridor was at least 7 feet tall, covered in orange and black striped fur, with golden eyes that seemed to look right through him. The alien walked on 2 legs like a human, but moved with a grace that reminded Jake of the big cats he had seen in zoos as a child. The Ralthari nodded at him as they passed, and Jake nodded back, trying not to stare. He made his way to the market district, following the signs that were written in both Ralthari script and Standard Galactic. The market was loud and busy. Dozens of species moved between stalls that sold everything from food to ship parts. Jake bought a hot drink from a vendor and wandered through the crowd, enjoying the break from ship duty. That was when he heard the sound. It was a deep groan of metal under stress, followed by a crack that made everyone in the market freeze. Jake turned toward the noise and saw dust falling from the ceiling in the old storage section. People started backing away, but then came another sound that made his blood run cold. The screaming of children. Jake ran toward the sound while others ran away. He pushed through a door marked with warning signs and found himself in a dimly lit storage area. The ceiling had partially collapsed, and support beams hung at dangerous angles. In the middle of the wreckage, he saw them. 5 small Ralthari, no taller than his waist, huddled together under fallen metal and broken crates. They were cubs, their fur still soft, and their stripes not yet fully defined. An older Ralthari lay near them, pinned under a beam. The elder was trying to reach the cubs but could not move. Blood matted the fur on his shoulder. Jake did not think. He just moved. He climbed over twisted metal and ducking under hanging cables. The structure groaned again, and more dust fell. One of the cubs, a small female with bright amber eyes, saw him coming and cried out in fear. To her, Jake probably looked strange and scary. "It's okay," Jake said, knowing she probably did not understand his words but hoping his tone would help. "I'm here to help." He reached the elder first. The Ralthari looked at him with surprise and pain. Jake examined the beam, pinning him down. It was too heavy to lift alone, but he could move it if he used leverage. He found a piece of broken pipe and wedged it under the beam, then pushed down with all his strength. The beam shifted just enough for the elder to drag himself free. "The cubs," the elder gasped in accented Standard. "Save the cubs." Jake turned to the children. 3 of them were trapped behind fallen crates that blocked their path. The other 2, including the small female who had seen him first, were under a section of ceiling that could fall completely at any moment. Jake's training kicked in. Assess the situation. Prioritize. Act fast. He went to the 3 cubs behind the crates first. He pushed and pulled at the heavy boxes, his muscles burning with effort. The Ralthari were adapted to lighter gravity than Earth's, and these crates were not as heavy to them as they would be to a human. But Jake had trained his whole life in Earth's stronger gravity. What felt immovable to the Ralthari, Jake could shift. He cleared a path and the 3 cubs scrambled through, running to the elder who had managed to sit up. That left 2 cubs still trapped. The small female, and a slightly larger male cub with darker stripes. Jake heard voices behind him. Ralthari security had arrived, but they stopped at the entrance, assessing the danger. The structure was too unstable. One wrong move and the whole section would come down. "Stay back," Jake shouted. "I've got them." He moved carefully to where the 2 cubs huddled. The male cub hissed at him, trying to be brave despite his obvious fear. The female just stared with those huge amber eyes. Above them, the ceiling section hung by a single bent support beam. Jake could see cracks spreading across the metal. "Come here," Jake said softly, reaching out his hand. The male cub looked at his sister, then at Jake, and made a decision. He pushed the female cub toward Jake, and Jake grabbed her gently. She was so light in his arms, barely 20 pounds. He carried her quickly back to the cleared area and handed her to a Ralthari security officer who had ventured just inside the entrance. Jake turned back for the male cub, but in that moment, the support beam gave way. The ceiling section dropped 3 feet and stopped, caught on another piece of wreckage. But it would not hold long. The male cub was now completely trapped, unable to move forward or backward. No, Jake breathed. He looked around for something. Anything he could use. The Ralthari security officers were shouting at him to get out, that it was too dangerous. But Jake saw the cub's face, saw the terror there, and he knew he could not leave. He found 2 emergency support struts in a storage locker on the wall. They were designed to hold ship bulkheads during repairs. Jake grabbed them and ran back to the trapped cub. The metal above them groaned like a living thing in pain. "I need help," Jake shouted to the security officers. "When I lift, you pull him out." One of the Ralthari, younger and braver than the others, came forward. Jake positioned the support struts and activated them. They extended, pushing against the fallen ceiling. But it was not enough. The weight was too great. Jake made a choice. He positioned himself under the ceiling section, the struts on either side of him, and pushed up with his back and legs. Pain shot through his body. He felt something tear in his shoulder, but the ceiling section rose, inch by terrible inch. "Now," Jake grunted through gritted teeth. "Get him now." The young Ralthari officer darted forward and grabbed the male cub, pulling him free. The moment they were clear, Jake's strength gave out. He dove to the side as the ceiling section crashed down, missing him by inches. The impact sent a wave of dust and debris through the area, and everything went quiet. Jake lay on the floor, breathing hard, his whole body shaking. Hands grabbed him and pulled him away from the wreckage. He found himself surrounded by Ralthari, some in security uniforms, others in civilian clothes. The 5 cubs were there too, all safe, all staring at him with wide eyes. The elder Ralthari, despite his injury, bowed his head to Jake. Around them, more Ralthari were gathering, drawn by the commotion. They looked at the human lying exhausted on the floor, then at the cubs he had saved, then back at him. Jake tried to stand, but his legs would not cooperate. A Ralthari medic pushed through the crowd and began examining him. Jake's vision started to blur at the edges, shock and pain finally catching up to him. The last thing he saw before the medics sedated him was the small female cub. She had broken free from the adult holding her and pressed something into his hand. It was a small piece of metal, bent into a crude shape. A gift. Her whiskers twitched, and even though Jake could not speak her language, he understood. She was saying thank you. Then darkness took him, and Jake knew nothing more. Jake woke up in a medical bay with white walls and the steady beep of monitors. His shoulder was wrapped in bandages, and his whole body felt like someone had used it as a punching bag. A Ralthari doctor with gray streaks in her fur stood nearby, checking a display screen. "You are awake," she said in standard. Her accent thick, but understandable. "Good. You are very lucky, human. A torn shoulder muscle, 3 cracked ribs, and many bruises. But you will heal." "The cubs," Jake said immediately. "Are they okay?" The doctor's whiskers twitched, and what Jake would learn was a Ralthari smile. "All 5 cubs are healthy. You saved them. The elder, Kreshtar, is also recovering. You did a brave thing." Jake relaxed back into the bed. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," the doctor said firmly. "Not anyone. Many ran away. You ran toward danger. This is not what we expect from humans." Before Jake could respond, the door opened. A massive Ralthari male entered, his orange and black fur marked with white scars from old battles. He wore a military uniform with ranks that Jake recognized as high command. The Ralthari moved with controlled power, and his golden eyes studied Jake with an intensity that made the human feel like he was being measured. "I am Commander Vex Thrall," the Ralthari said. His voice was deep and rough. "The female cub you saved, Salika, is my daughter. The male cub is my son, Rendil." Jake tried to sit up straighter, ignoring the pain. "Sir, I'm glad I could help," Vex Thrall was quiet for a long moment. In Rothari culture, when someone saves a cub's life, especially a warrior's cub, they create a blood debt. You have saved not one but two of my children. This is not a small thing. I don't need anything in return, Jake said. Really? I'm just happy they're safe. The commander's tail swished behind him, a sign of agitation. You do not understand. In our culture, you have earned a place in our clan's history. But I do not know what to do with this. You are human. Humans are diplomats, negotiators, not warriors. Yet you did what even some of my own warriors hesitated to do. We can please see you as Bede. Jake could hear the conflict in the commander's voice. The Ralthari clearly respected courage. But Jake's actions did not fit what they believed about humans. Maybe, Jake said carefully. Courage looks different for different species, but it's still courage. Vex Thrall stared at him for another long moment, then turned and left without another word. The doctor shook her head. You have created quite a stir, Lieutenant Morrison. The whole station is talking about what you did. Over the next 2 days, Jake learned just how much of a stir he had caused. He was released from the medical bay with orders to rest, but rest proved impossible. The 5 cubs he had saved, along with several others, kept finding him. They followed him through the corridors of the station, keeping a respectful distance but watching everything he did. Salika was the bravest. She would come close, her amber eyes curious, and try to talk to him in her own language. Jake did not understand the words, but he understood her intent. She wanted to know about him, about humans, about why he had saved her. Jake found himself in the station's common area on his 3rd day, sitting and drinking coffee while his shoulder healed. Salika appeared with her brother Rendil and 3 other cubs. They sat near him, trying to look casual but clearly wanting to interact. Hello, Jake said with a smile. You're Salika, right? And you're Rendil? Salika's ears perked up. She said something in Ralthari. And one of the other cubs, slightly older, spoke in careful standard. She says, thank you for saving her. She says you are very strong. Jake laughed softly. I'm not that strong. I was just in the right place at the right time. The translator cub, a male with unusually dark stripes, tilted his head. Why did you help us? Humans and Ralthari are not close allies. You could have died, because you needed help, Jake said simply. Where I come from, we have a saying. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. It doesn't matter if they're human or not. The cubs listened intently as the translator passed along Jake's words. Salika said something that made the other cubs make sounds like purring laughter. What did she say? Jake asked. The translator cub's whiskers twitched. She says you are like a guardian from the old stories. Warriors who protect cubs are the greatest heroes in our culture. Over the following days, the cubs became Jake's constant companions. They asked endless questions about Earth, about human culture, about his training. Jake found himself telling them stories about human history, about firefighters who ran into burning buildings to save people, about soldiers who protected civilians, about ordinary people who did extraordinary things when someone needed help. The cubs listened to every word and asked for more. Jake noticed that adult Ralthari watched these interactions with mixed expressions. Some looked approving. Others looked confused or even angry. On the 5th day, alarms blared through the station. Jake was in the market district with the cubs when it happened. Everyone froze as the station commander's voice came over the speakers. Attention all personnel. We have received a threat from the Void Reapers. They demand we surrender our medical supplies within 12 hours or they will attack. All military personnel report to your stations. All civilians proceed to designated safe zones. The cubs around Jake started making distressed sounds. The Void Reapers were known throughout this sector as brutal pirates who kept their promises. If they said they would attack, they would. Jake's communicator buzzed. It was Captain Morris, from the Horizon's Dawn. Morrison, get back to the ship. We're evacuating. Jake looked at the cubs huddled around him, fear in their eyes. He looked at the Ralthari families rushing through the corridors, trying to find safety. He thought about what the pirates would do if they took the station. "Sir," Jake said into his communicator, "I request permission to stay and assist with station defense." There was silence on the other end. Then, "Jake, you're a security officer, not a combat specialist. This isn't our fight. With respect, sir, it is now. These people need help." Another pause. "I can't order you to stay. But I won't stop you either. Be careful, Lieutenant." "Thank you, sir." Jake closed the communicator and looked down at Salika. She was clinging to his leg, her small claws gripping his uniform. He knelt down to her level. "It's going to be okay," he said softly. "I promise." He did not know if he could keep that promise, but he would try. Jake made his way to the security center where Ralthari warriors were gathering. Commander Vex Thrall stood at the center, reviewing tactical displays. When he saw Jake enter, his eyes narrowed. "You should be on your ship, human." "I'm staying to help, sir. I have combat training. I can fight." Vex Thrall's tail lashed. "This is warriors' work, not for diplomats." "Then it's a good thing I'm not a diplomat," Jake said firmly. "I'm a security officer. I've trained for situations like this. Use me or don't. But I'm not leaving these people to face this alone." The other Ralthari warriors watched this exchange with interest. One of them, a female with a scar across her muzzle, spoke up. "Commander, he saved your cubs. Perhaps we should let him prove himself in battle as well." Vex Thrall studied Jake for a long moment. Finally, he gestured to the tactical display. "The Void Reapers have 12 ships. We have 6 defense platforms and 20 fighters. They outnumber us significantly." Jake studied the display, his mind working through possibilities. "What about civilian evacuation? We are moving all non-combatants to reinforce shelters in the station's core. The cubs will be there, along with the elders." "Good," Jake said. "But we should also prepare defensive positions throughout the station. If they breach the hull, we need fallback points that protect the shelters." Vex Thrall's ears went back, a sign of surprise. "You think tactically." "I was trained to," Jake replied. "Humans might not be as strong as Ralthari in single combat, but we're good at planning and adapting." For the first time, Vex Thrall's expression showed something other than doubt. "Show me your defensive plans." "Human, we have 12 hours. Let us see if your human tactics are worth anything." As Jake began working with the Ralthari warriors, he felt the weight of what was coming. The Void Reapers were ruthless. This would not be easy, but when he thought of Salika and the other cubs hiding in the shelters, depending on warriors like him to keep them safe, he knew he had made the right choice. The battle was coming, and Jake Morrison would be ready. The 12 hours passed too quickly. Jake spent them helping coordinate defensive positions throughout Station Crimson Fang. He worked alongside Ralthari warriors who watched him with curiosity and growing respect. His suggestions made sense. Create choke points in the corridors. Position armed teams near critical systems. Keep communication lines open between all defensive positions. The cubs had been moved to the reinforced shelters hours ago. Jake had seen Salika one last time before she went in. She had touched his hand with her small paw and made a sound that the translator said meant, "Stay safe." He had promised her he would try. Now Jake stood in the command center with Commander Vex Thrall and the other senior warriors. Through the viewports, they could see the emptiness of space. Waiting, the defense platforms were active, their weapons charged. The 20 Ralthari fighters flew in formation around the station. It looked impressive until you remembered that 12 pirate ships were coming. "They are here," someone said. On the sensors, 12 red dots appeared, moving fast toward the station. The Void Reaper fleet was a mix of different ship types, all armed and dangerous. Leading them was a massive cruiser that made the station's defense platforms look small. "All teams to battle stations," Vex Thrall ordered. His voice carried through the communication system to every warrior on the station. "Remember your training. Protect the station. Protect our people." The first weapons fire lit up the darkness of space. The defense platforms opened up on the approaching ships, and the pirate fleet returned fire. The Ralthari fighters engaged, their pilots skilled and brave. But the pirates had numbers and firepower. Jake watched the tactical display, tracking the battle. The pirates were using their larger ships to take hits from the defense platforms, while their smaller ships tried to flank and hit weak points. It was a brutal strategy, but effective. "They are going for the eastern dock," Jake said, pointing at the display. "See how 3 ships are concentrating their fire there?" Vex's thrall nodded grimly. "Send warriors to reinforce that section. If they breach there, they will have direct access to the station's main corridors." The battle raged. Explosions flashed outside the viewports. The station shook as weapons hit the shields. Jake could feel the fear in the command center, but also the determination. The Ralthari were warriors. They would fight for their home. The eastern dock shields failed. The 3 pirate ships attached to the hull like parasites, and sensors showed breach pods cutting through the metal. The invasion had begun. "I am going to the eastern dock," Vex Thrall announced, grabbing his weapon. "All warriors, with me." Jake followed without being asked. He grabbed a rifle from the weapons locker, checking its charge. The Ralthari weapon was designed for their larger hands, but Jake made it work. He had trained with dozens of different weapon types. Adaptation was a human strength. They ran through the corridors, dozens of Ralthari warriors with Jake among them. He felt the difference in their running styles. The Ralthari were faster in short bursts, their powerful legs built for pouncing, but Jake had endurance. He could keep this pace for miles if needed. They reached the eastern dock just as the pirates poured through the breach points. The pirates were a mix of species, all armed with heavy weapons and looking for a fight. The battle became chaos instantly. Jake took cover behind a cargo container and opened fire. His shots were careful and measured. The Ralthari fought with aggressive charges, using their natural speed and strength to overwhelm opponents. It was impressive but also left them exposed. Jake provided covering fire, dropping pirates who tried to flank the Ralthari warriors. The fight was loud and violent. Weapons fire echoed off the metal walls. Someone screamed. Something exploded. Jake's training kept him calm and focused. Identify targets. Control your breathing. Make every shot count. But there were too many pirates. For every one they dropped, 2 more seemed to take their place. The Ralthari warriors were being pushed back, step by step, away from the dock and into the main station corridors. Jake was reviewing the tactical map on his wrist display when he saw something that made his blood run cold. A second group of pirates had infiltrated through a maintenance corridor. They were not heading toward the fight at the eastern dock. They were moving in the opposite direction, toward the station's core, toward the shelters where the cubs were hidden. "Commander," Jake shouted over the noise of battle. "We have infiltrators heading for the civilian shelters. Grid Section 7. Maintenance level." Quote, Vex Thrall snarled, dropping a pirate with a burst from his weapon. "I cannot spare warriors from here. If we fall back now, they will take the whole dock." Jake understood immediately. The attack at the eastern dock was a distraction. The real target was the shelters. Take hostages, especially cubs, and the Ralthari would surrender anything to get them back. "I'll go," Jake said. "You cannot face them alone, human. There are 6 of them according to sensors." "I don't have a choice," Jake replied. "Those cubs are depending on us." Vex Thrall looked at Jake, and something passed between them. An understanding. The commander nodded once. "Go. May your ancestors give you strength." Jake ran. He left the battle at the eastern dock and sprinted toward the maintenance corridors. His ribs still hurt from his injuries days ago. But he pushed the pain aside. There was no time for pain. Salika's face flashed in his mind, those amber eyes trusting him to keep her safe. The maintenance corridors were narrow and poorly lit, perfect for an ambush. Jake slowed down, moving carefully now, his weapon ready. He could hear sounds ahead, voices speaking in a language he did not know. The pirates. Jake used the corridor layout to his advantage. The narrow passages meant the pirates could not spread out. Their numbers would not help them here. He found a junction where 3 corridors met and set up his position. When the pirates came around the corner, Jake was ready. He dropped the first pirate with 2 shots to the chest. The others scattered, taking cover and returning fire. Weapons fire filled the narrow space. Jake moved to a different position, using the corridor's turns and junctions to stay ahead of them. They were hunting him, but he was hunting them too. A pirate charged around a corner and Jake met him with the butt of his rifle, breaking the alien's face. Another came from a side corridor, and Jake shot him at point-blank range. The fight was brutal and close. No room for fancy tactics, just survival. Jake's weapon ran out of charge. He dropped it and pulled a knife from his belt. A pirate saw his chance and lunged. They crashed to the floor, grappling. The pirate was strong, his breath hot and foul. Jake used his legs, finding leverage, and drove his knife into the pirate's side. The pirate screamed and rolled away. Jake grabbed the pirate's weapon and kept moving. 3 down. 3 to go. But Jake was bleeding now from a cut on his arm. His shoulder injury was screaming at him. He was running on determination alone. The corridor opened into a wider maintenance bay. The remaining 3 pirates were there, working on the shelter door controls. The shelter was right there, just beyond that door. Inside were dozens of cubs, including Salika and Rendell. "Hey!" Jake shouted. The 3 pirates turned. Their leader was massive, a Zendari with cybernetic implants covering half his body. His name was Grusk. Jake would learn later. Right now, all Jake knew was that this alien stood between him and the cubs he had promised to protect. "One human," Grusk said in rough standard. His voice was mechanical, filtered through his implants. "You think you can stop us?" "I'm going to try," Jake said. Grusk laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Humans are weak. Soft. You are not warriors." "Then this should be easy for you," Jake replied. He raised his weapon and fired. The battle was on. The fight was the hardest thing Jake had ever done. The 3 pirates were experienced fighters. Grusk's cybernetic enhancements made him fast and strong. But Jake had something they did not expect. He had been fighting in these corridors for the last 30 minutes. He knew every inch of this maintenance bay. And he was fighting for something that mattered. Jake used the equipment in the bay as weapons and cover. He damaged a coolant line, and the spray of freezing liquid slowed 1 pirate down. He knocked over a stack of supply crates to block Grusk's path. He fought dirty, fought smart, fought with everything he had. 1 pirate went down, then the second. That left only Grusk. The big Zendari was bleeding from several wounds but still coming. His cybernetic arm grabbed Jake by the throat and lifted him off the ground. Jake could not breathe. Black spots danced in his vision. He saw the shelter door behind Grusk. Through the small viewport, he could see faces pressed against the glass, small faces with amber eyes. The cubs were watching. Jake refused to die here, not with them watching, not when they needed him. He pulled another knife, his last one, and drove it into the joint of Grusk's cybernetic arm. Sparks flew. The grip loosened enough for Jake to break free. They fought across the maintenance bay. 2 warriors refusing to surrender. Grusk was stronger. Jake was more desperate. In the end, desperation won. Jake used Grusk's own momentum against him, sending the big Zendari crashing into a power conduit. Electricity arced through Grusk's cybernetic implants. He screamed and fell. Jake stood over him, breathing hard. Blood dripping from a dozen wounds. Grusk was down but alive. His systems short-circuited. The other 2 pirates were unconscious or dead. The shelter door remained locked and secure. The sound of running feet echoed through the corridor. Vex Thrall and a squad of warriors appeared, weapons ready. They stopped when they saw the scene. Jake standing alone, surrounded by defeated pirates, his body battered but his spirit unbroken. Vex Thrall approached slowly. He looked at the pirates, then at the sealed shelter door, then at Jake. "You held them," the commander said quietly. "I made a promise," Jake said simply. Then his legs gave out, and he collapsed. Jake woke up in the medical bay again. This time, the pain was worse. His whole body felt like it was on fire. The same Ralthery doctor from before stood nearby, but her expression was different now. She looked at him with something like awe. "You should be dead," she said bluntly. "The damage you took in that fight would have killed most species, but humans are strange. You just keep going." Jake tried to speak, but his throat was raw. The doctor gave him water and he drank gratefully. "Did we win?" he managed to ask. "Yes. Once you stopped the infiltration team." Commander Vex Thrall led the warriors in a counterattack at the eastern dock. The pirates lost their foothold and retreated. The station is secure. Relief flooded through Jake. "The Cubs? All safe." "Because of you." The doctor paused. "They saw you fight. You know, through the viewport in the shelter door. The Cubs watched you face those pirates alone." Jake closed his eyes. He had not wanted them to see that. Combat was ugly and brutal. No child should have to watch it. "They are calling you a hero," the doctor continued. "The Cubs cannot stop talking about what you did. Especially Commander Vex Thrall's daughter, Salika. She has been sitting outside this medical bay for hours, waiting for you to wake up." "Can I see her?" The doctor's whiskers twitched. "I will allow it. But you need rest. Your body needs time to heal." She left and returned a moment later with Salika. The small Ralthari cub walked slowly into the room, her eyes wide. When she saw Jake awake, she made a sound like a chirp and ran to his bedside. She was careful not to touch his injuries, but she pressed her small face against his hand. She spoke in Ralthari, the words tumbling out fast. The doctor translated. "She says thank you. She says you are the bravest warrior she has ever seen. She says she wants to be like you when she grows up." Jake felt tears sting his eyes. He gently touched Salika's soft fur. "Tell her she is already brave." She stayed calm in the shelter and kept the other cubs calm too. "That takes courage." The doctor translated, and Salika's ears perked up. She spoke again, and the doctor smiled as she translated. "She says her father wants to see you. There is to be a ceremony." "What kind of ceremony?" "You will see." Over the next 3 days, Jake healed faster than the doctors expected. "Human resilience," they said. By the 4th day, he could walk without help, though his body was covered in bandages and bruises. Commander Vex Thrall came to visit him every day, and each time, the Ralthari commander seemed less conflicted. "I was wrong about humans," Vex Thrall said during one visit. "I thought you were only good for talking and making agreements. I thought you were weak, but you fought 6 pirates alone to protect our young. That is not weakness. We're all just trying to survive out here," Jake said. "Humans, Ralthari, everyone. Maybe we are not so different." Vex Thrall's tail swished thoughtfully. "Perhaps, but what you did was extraordinary, and it must be recognized." On the 5th day, Jake was summoned to the station's main assembly hall. He walked there slowly, still sore, and found the hall filled with Ralthari. Warriors in uniform, civilians, elders, and dozens of cubs. They all turned to look at him when he entered. At the front of the hall stood Commander Vex Thrall and the Council of Clans, a group of elder Ralthari who led their people. Jake felt very small and very human under all those golden eyes. "Lieutenant Jake Morrison," Vex Thrall's voice echoed through the hall. "You are called before the council to receive our judgment." Jake's heart pounded. Judgment sounded serious. But then he saw Salika in the crowd, and she was making excited sounds. This could not be a bad thing if she was happy. One of the elders, an ancient Ralthari with white fur and kind eyes, stepped forward. "Human warrior, you have done something no outsider has ever done. You saved our cubs not once but twice. You faced danger when others fled. You stood alone against enemies who should have defeated you. You kept your promise to protect the innocent." The elder paused, and the whole hall was silent. In our culture, there is a title given only to the greatest warriors, those who prove themselves through the ultimate test, protecting the young of our species. We call them Kalveshthar, guardians of cubs. Guardians of cubs. Jake's translator implant made sure he understood every word. The elder continued. In our entire history, only 23 warriors have earned this title. All were Ralthari. Until today, the elder approached Jake and placed something around his neck. It was a medallion made of dark metal, carved with Ralthari symbols. It was heavy and felt important. Jake Morrison, we name you Kalveshthar, guardian of cubs. You are the first human to receive this honor. Wear it with pride, for you have earned it with your blood and courage. The hall erupted in sound. The Ralthari were making noises Jake had never heard before. It took him a moment to realize they were cheering. For him, a human. But the loudest sounds came from the cubs. They were jumping and calling his name, their young voices mixing with the deeper tones of the adults. Salika pushed through the crowd and hugged his leg, and soon other cubs joined her. Jake found himself surrounded by small Ralthari, all wanting to touch the human who had protected them. Vex Thrall came forward and placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. My cubs are alive because of you. My people are safe because of you. I was wrong to doubt human courage. From this day forward, you are family to my clan. You are clan to all Ralthari who hear your story. Jake did not know what to say. He was just a security officer who had done what felt right. But looking at the faces around him, seeing the respect and gratitude, he understood. This was about more than him. This was about humans and Ralthari seeing each other differently. I am honored, Jake said finally, his voice thick with emotion. I will carry this title with respect. The ceremony continued with speeches and traditional Ralthari songs. Jake learned that the story of his fight against the pirates was already spreading. The cubs who had watched through the viewport had told their parents, who told others, who told others. The story was growing, changing slightly with each telling. But the core remained the same. A human warrior had stood alone against impossible odds to save their young. Later that night, Jake sat in a quiet corner of the station with the 5 cubs he had first rescued. Salika sat closest to him, her brother Rendile on his other side. The other 3 cubs sprawled nearby, content and safe. Tell us about Earth, Salika said through the translator cub. Tell us about human warriors. Jake thought about how to answer. On Earth, we have many different kinds of warriors. Soldiers who protect our people, but also firefighters who run into burning buildings, doctors who fight diseases, teachers who protect knowledge. Being a warrior is not just about fighting. It's about protecting what matters. The cubs listened intently. Rendil spoke up. Are all humans like you? Jake smiled. Humans come in all types. Some are brave in obvious ways, like fighting. Others are brave in quiet ways, like being kind when it is hard to be kind. But I think most humans would do what I did if they saw someone in danger. We are built to protect each other. Even if the ones in danger are not human? Salika asked. Especially then, Jake said. Because protecting only your own people is easy. Protecting everyone, no matter what they look like or where they come from. That is what makes someone truly strong. The cubs made thoughtful sounds. One of them, a small male with bright orange fur, said something that made the others laugh. The translator cub explained. He says he wants to visit Earth someday. He wants to learn human fighting techniques. Jake laughed too. Earth would be happy to teach you. And maybe Ralthari can teach us some of your fighting techniques. We could learn from each other. Trade knowledge, Salika said, her eyes bright. Like warriors sharing battle stories. Exactly like that. They sat together for a long time. Human and Ralthari cubs, sharing stories and dreams. Outside the viewport, the stars shone cold and distant. But here, in this small corner of the station, something new was being built. Understanding, respect, maybe even friendship. Commander Vex Thrall found them there hours later. He stood in the doorway, watching Jake with his cubs. And Jake saw something in the commander's eyes that had not been there before. Acceptance. Trust. The cubs should sleep, Vex Thrall said gently. Tomorrow is a new day. The cubs protested but obeyed, saying their goodbyes to Jake. Salika was the last to leave. She pressed something into Jake's hand. Another small gift. Like the first one she had given him. This time, it was a small carving of a Ralthari warrior. Made from wood, She made it herself, Vexthral said. She wanted you to have it. To remember her. Vexthral. She wanted you to have it. I could never forget her, Jake said softly. After the cubs left, Vexthral sat beside Jake. They looked out at the stars together. Two warriors from different worlds. You have changed things, Vexthral said. The cubs will grow up knowing that humans can be trusted. That humans can be warriors. This will shape their generation and the ones that follow. I just wanted to help, Jake said. That is what makes you a true guardian of cubs, Vexthral replied. You did not seek glory or recognition. You simply saw children in danger and could not walk away. That is the mark of a real warrior. They sat in comfortable silence. And Jake felt the weight of the medallion around his neck. He had come to this station for a simple supply run. He would leave as something more. A bridge between species. A legend among cubs. A guardian. Tomorrow he would return to the horizon's dawn. But tonight, he was exactly where he needed to be. 3 weeks had passed since the ceremony. Jake spent that time recovering and preparing for his departure. The horizon's dawn was scheduled to leave Station Crimson Fang in 2 days, and Jake felt conflicted about going. He had grown close to the Ralthari people, especially the cubs who followed him everywhere. The station had changed. Or maybe Jake's perception of it had changed. Where he once saw alien faces and customs he did not understand, he now saw friends and a culture he respected. The Ralthari warriors greeted him with salutes. The civilians nodded with respect. And the cubs, well, the cubs had adopted him completely. Every day, Salika and her brother Rendil came to find him. They brought other cubs with them. And the group grew larger each time. Jake found himself telling more stories about Earth and humanity, but he also listened to their stories about Ralthari history and culture. It was an exchange, a sharing of worlds. One afternoon, Jake sat in the station's observation deck with 15 cubs gathered around him. Salika sat at his feet, her amber eyes watching his face as he spoke. On Earth, Jake said, we have oceans. Huge bodies of water that cover most of our planet. Some humans spend their whole lives on boats, traveling these oceans and protecting others who sail there. Like warriors? A small cub asked. Like guardians, Jake corrected gently. They rescue ships in trouble. They guide lost travelers. They keep the waters safe. Being a warrior is not always about fighting. Sometimes it is about being there when someone needs help. The cubs made thoughtful sounds. They were learning, Jake realized, not just about humans but about a different way of thinking about strength and courage. The Ralthari valued combat skill above almost everything, but through Jake's stories, they were discovering that humans valued many kinds of bravery. Rendil spoke up. When you go back to your ship, will you forget about us? The question caught Jake off guard. No, he said firmly. Never. You will all be in my thoughts every day. But you will be far away, Salika said softly. We will not see you again. Jake knelt down to her level. Distance does not matter. What matters is that we shared this time together. You taught me about Ralthari courage and honor. I hope I taught you something about human values. Those lessons will stay with us forever. An adult Ralthari, one of the cubs' teachers, approached the group. She bowed her head respectfully to Jake. Guardian Morrison, I must ask you something. The cubs have been telling stories about you throughout the station, about your rescue, about your fight with the pirates, about your lessons. These stories are spreading to other stations, other colonies. You have become something of a legend among our young people. Jake felt uncomfortable with that description. I'm just one person who did what anyone should do. The teacher's whiskers twitched. That humility is part of why the story resonates. But I want to ask, what do you want the cubs to learn from your story? If they remember one thing about Jake Morrison, what should it be? Jake thought carefully. This was important. Stories had power, especially among the young. What he said now might shape how a generation of Ralthari cubs understood humans and humanity. Tell them, Jake said slowly. That strength comes in many forms. Tell them that protecting others is never weakness. Tell them that different species have different gifts, and we should learn from each other instead of assuming one way is better. And most importantly, tell them that when you see someone in need, you help. It does not matter if they are your species or not, your friend or not, your ally or not. You help because it is the right thing to do. The teacher nodded. Those are good lessons. I will make sure they are part of the stories we tell. That evening, Commander Vex Thrall invited Jake to his family quarters for a meal. It was a private honor, and Jake accepted gratefully. The commander's home was warm and filled with signs of family life. Pictures of cubs at different ages, traditional weapons mounted on walls, and the smell of cooking food. Salika and Rendil were excited to have Jake in their home. They showed him their rooms, their toys, their collections of things important to young cubs. Jake saw that Salika had created a small shrine of sorts with the gifts she had given him, or copies of them. She had pictures too, drawn in the Ralthari style, showing a human figure standing between cubs and danger. She draws you every day, Vex Thrall said, watching his daughter with fond eyes. You have become her hero. Her example of what a warrior should be. That's a lot of responsibility, Jake said. Yes. But you have shown you can carry it. Vex Thrall led Jake to the dining area where his mate, a elegant Ralthari female named Selmara, waited. She bowed her head to Jake. You saved my children, she said simply. There are no words sufficient to express my gratitude. Your children are wonderful, Jake replied. I would do it again without hesitation. The meal was traditional Ralthari cuisine, adapted slightly for human digestion. As they ate, Vex Thrall told Jake about communications he had received from other Ralthari colonies. Your story has spread faster than I expected, the commander said. Other stations want to know about the human guardian. Warrior clans are asking questions about human combat techniques. Some are requesting cultural exchanges with human military forces. Jake paused with his food halfway to his mouth. Really? The cubs are driving it, Selmara explained. They tell the story to their parents, who tell others. Young Ralthari are suddenly very interested in humans. They want to know more about your species, your culture, your ways of fighting. You have made humans interesting to a generation that barely noticed you before. I never intended any of that, Jake said. I just wanted to help. That is precisely why it works, Vex Thrall said. If you had been seeking glory or trying to impress us, the story would feel hollow. But you acted from genuine care. That authenticity resonates, especially with the young who can sense insincerity. Rendil climbed onto his father's lap. Father says you are the best warrior he knows, the cub announced proudly. Vex Thrall looked embarrassed, but he did not deny it. I said you are among the best. Your strength lies not in your claws or fangs, but in your heart and mind. You think before you act, but you do not hesitate when action is needed. That balance is rare. After the meal, Jake sat with the family, and they shared stories late into the night. Salika fell asleep against Jake's side, and he carefully avoided moving so as not to wake her. Selmara smiled at the sight. She will be heartbroken when you leave, the Ralthari mother said gently. I will miss her too, Jake admitted. All of them. This time here has changed me. As you have changed us, Vex Thrall said. The next day, Jake's final full day on the station, a delegation of cubs approached him with a request. They wanted him to attend their school and speak to all the young Ralthari. The teachers had approved it, and the cubs had worked together to invite him. Jake agreed, and that afternoon found himself in a large room filled with over 100 Ralthari cubs. They sat in organized groups, their eyes fixed on him with intense curiosity. The 5 cubs he had first rescued sat in the front row, looking proud that their guardian was there. Jake spoke to them about courage and kindness, about making choices that helped others even when those choices were difficult. He told them that being strong meant protecting those weaker than yourself, not dominating them. He explained that every species had something valuable to offer, and that learning from others made you stronger, not weaker. The cubs asked questions, so many questions. They wanted to know about Earth's history, about human wars and how humans made peace. They wanted to know about human families and how humans raised their young. They wanted to know if all humans were like Jake, and he honestly told them that humans came in all types, but most shared the same basic desire to protect and care for others. At the end of his talk, the Cubs presented him with a gift. It was a large banner, created by all of them together, showing Jake surrounded by Relthari Cubs. The artwork was simple but heartfelt. Words in Relthari script covered the borders, and the teacher translated them. Guardian of Cubs, bridge between worlds, teacher of courage, friend to the young. These are the titles the Cubs have given you, not from tradition or ceremony, but from their hearts. Jake felt tears threatening again. He accepted the banner with both hands, holding it carefully. I will treasure this forever, and I will carry the memory of all of you with me, wherever I go. That night, his last night on the station, Jake stood at the observation deck, looking out at the stars. He was not alone. Word had spread that he was leaving tomorrow, and Relthari had come to say goodbye. Warriors who clasped his arm in the traditional farewell, civilians who bowed their heads in respect, and Cubs, so many Cubs, who just wanted to be near him one more time. Salika came last. She carried something wrapped in cloth and presented it to Jake with a formal bow that she must have practiced. He unwrapped it carefully and found a small knife in a decorated sheath. The blade was Relthari made, sized for his human hand. My father helped me choose it, Salika said through her translator friend. A warrior's blade for a warrior, we will never forget. Jake knelt down and hugged her gently. Thank you. I will carry this and think of you. Will you come back? She asked, her voice small. I hope so. But even if I cannot, you will do great things. I know it. You are brave and smart and kind. The galaxy needs warriors like you. Salika nodded, trying to be strong. But she pressed her face against his shoulder for a long moment before stepping back. The next morning, Jake boarded the Horizon's Dawn. His captain, Captain Morris, greeted him at the airlock. I hear you have had quite an adventure, Lieutenant. You could say that, sir. The Relthari station commander sent a formal commendation for you. He also sent a request that you return whenever possible, and that Earth consider more exchanges with Relthari colonies. Apparently, you have become quite the diplomat. Jake smiled. I just helped some kids, sir. Well, those kids have changed the political landscape. The Relthari Council wants to establish stronger ties with humanity, starting with military cooperation and cultural programs. All because of what you did here. The Horizon's Dawn undocked and began its departure. Jake stood at a viewport, watching Station Crimson Fang grow smaller. He could see the observation deck where he had spent so much time. He imagined the Cubs there, watching him go. His communicator buzzed. It was a message from Vex Thrall. The Cubs insist on watching your ship until it jumps to faster-than-light travel. They are all at the observation deck. Waving, Salika says to tell you that she will become a guardian too, like you. She will protect others the way you protected her. That is your legacy, Jake Morrison. Not just a title or a story, but a generation of young Relthari who will grow up believing in cooperation, protection, and the value of all species. Travel safely, my friend. You are always welcome in our clan. Jake looked out at the station and saw the observation deck lit up. Even from this distance, he could imagine the small figures gathered there. He placed his hand against the viewport. A silent goodbye. The ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, and Station Crimson Fang vanished. But Jake knew that what happened there would not vanish. The stories would continue. The lessons would spread. The Cubs would grow up and tell their own Cubs about the human guardian who showed them that courage came in many forms. Years later, Jake would return to Station Crimson Fang. He would find Salika grown into a strong young warrior, training to join the station's security forces. She would tell him that her generation of Relthari had a different view of humans than their parents did. They saw humans as partners, as teachers, as friends. All because of the legend of the guardian who had earned his status among tiger cubs. But that was in the future. For now, Jake Morrison sat in his quarters aboard the Horizon's Dawn, holding the knife Salika had given him and the banner the cubs had made. He was just a security officer who had done what felt right. But sometimes, one person doing the right thing was enough to change the world. Or in this case, to change how two species saw each other, one young heart at a time.